Hello and good morning. Today on the morning show, we are welcoming four well-known philosophers from the 17th and 18th century who are here to discuss a topic that they mostly have never considered in all of their philosophical thinkings. Today our topic is immigration, but before we delve deeper into it, it would be nice to start with a little background information about you guys. Why don't we start with you, Voltaire?
Bonjour, my name is François-Marie Aput, but I am better known as Voltaire. I am a philosopher from Paris, France. I was born on November 21st of 1694 to the upper middle class family. My mother died when I was 7, and being the fifth child, one could say my life was messy. However, being born to a more wealthy family, I attended Collège Louis le Grand, a Jesuit secondary school between 1704 and 1711. While attending, I excelled in poetry, playwriting, history, and quickly became fluent in Latin, Greek, Italian, Spanish, French, and English. I was exiled to Toulouse in 1715, Asti in 1717 and 1726, and fled to Lorraine in 1733. As a philosopher, I find because of my life experiences, such as when I was exiled to Toulouse and Bastille, or when I was deported from France into England, they all have contributed to my views. With all of these experiences, I believe in and support social justice and reform, human rights, freedom of religion and trade, and defend civil liberties.
Hello, Governor. My name is Thomas Hobbes, and I am a British philosopher. I was born on April 5th, 1588 in Derbyshire in the United Kingdom. I was educated in social contract, classical realism, empiricism, materialism, and ethical egoism. I had a rough childhood, so people tell me. In fact, I don't even know my mom's name, for my childhood was basically just a blur. But what I do know is that I was educated at Westport Church when I was 4, then I went to Malmesbury School, and then to a private school kept by a man named Robert Latif, a graduate of the University of Oxford. I was a good student, and around 1603 I went up to Magdalen Hall. The principal, John Wilkinson, was a Puritan, and he did have an influence to my views. My view as a philosopher is that life is short, brutal, nasty, for I believe that humans are sinister, selfish, and horrible. Therefore, I believe that immigration is a big issue due to the economic ramifications, healthcare issues, and security problems.
Hello, I'm Immanuel Kant, a German philosopher born in Königsberg, or now known as Kaliningrad, on the 22nd of April, 1724. I was born into an artisan family where my mother was educated. Although my father wasn't as educated, he was a harness maker. We were not very wealthy, and we sometimes had to rely on relatives depending on our financial situation. My family made me go to a pietist school, which I hated, but my parents made me attend there until I went to the college called the Albertina. I was taught basic philosophy in my freshman year there, which is where I gained interest in metaphysics, cosmopolitanism, and my other views. I published my first book called Thoughts on the True Estimation of Living Forces in 1747 and have continued studying philosophy ever since.
Thank you, Mr. Kant. My name is Gottfried Wilhelm von Liebniz, and I'm a German philosopher who was born in Leipzig on July 1st, 1646. I had a primary scholastic or religious education along with a Renaissance humanistic education, meaning a philosophical education centered around the study of humans. In 1661, I began at the college in Leipzig, and it was there that I met Jacob Thomasson, who helped me supervise my first philosophical writing on the principle of individualization, which happened to be the inciting incident for my philosophical career. From my philosophical career, I'm most famous for a few principles. The most important, though, are the law of optimism and the law of reason, which state that everything happens for the best and that everything happens for a reason. I believe that the most important ideas about immigration included support of the American dream, the jobs offered to immigrants, and the political benefits. My views in the past have often tended to fluctuate and change depending on new ideas or principles that I have created or discovered. So often it is hard for me to pin down exactly what I believe, as it is constantly changing. However, I'm firm on my belief and respect for ancient philosophers like Aristotle and Plato, who have both inspired a variety of my principles and beliefs and have helped me reach conclusions on my views on immigration. Now back to you, Mr. Descartes.
Well, that's sure a lot of information to take in, but I don't think it will save your life, so no need to worry about memorizing all that stuff. Now let's move on to your guys' views on immigration that you mentioned earlier. Why don't we start with you, Mr. Hobbes?
Immigration is horrible. Life is already too short, and people want to spend it in multiple countries. Each year, more and more immigrants come to our country and take our jobs. In fact, the third highest income in Mexico is money sent back home from the U.S. I believe in a strong government, and with the money being lost to Mexico, it is an example of how immigrants are weakening us. As Encyclopedia Britannica states correctly, I have a very strong sense of government, for I believe in a very strong sense of security. What is believed is that immigrants are seeking a better place with a more peaceful setting, and however, I believe what I wrote in my book, Leviathan. There is no such thing as perpetual tranquility of the mind while we live here, because life itself is but motion, and can never be without desire, nor without fear, no more than without sense. But now I have said enough. Over to you, Mr. Liebniz.
I utterly disagree with you, Thomas Hobbes. Many people live in different places during their lives. In fact, I myself spent 4 years living and working in Paris, which I enjoyed very much and learned a great deal. If people want to come over to the U.S. or some other country, they should be allowed to. As I wrote in Confessio Philosophy, nothing exists without reason, meaning that if immigrants are here, then they do have a purpose. As the Stanford Encyclopedia of Philosophy explained in an article about me by Brandon C. Look, I believe that it is God's will that makes everything happen. So if God wills and wants people to immigrate to America, it is not our choice but that they will come over the border and settle in a new place. Since God would never want to hurt us, the large amount of immigrants who are coming to the U.S. will most likely help the country in some way. Perhaps the reason is they support the American dream and the fact that anyone can have a better chance of thriving if only they work hard. This not only helps support American ideals, but also encourages others to immigrate to the U.S. in order to seek new opportunities, which leads to greater growth in a large number of economic ways, like starting new businesses, which employ more people. Now, Voltaire, I believe you do support immigration, merely not in the same way as me, as you have reached your conclusion through a different path. Would you be so kind as to explain your views?
I do, because I, for one, would still be in England if it wasn't for France granting me re-entry. I believe that immigration is a good tool to have, but if a country starts letting a large number of immigrants in, then the system starts to be abused. However, immigrants that are granted citizenship are newly perceived as the nationality that they move to. These people are treated differently than those who immigrated illegally, because this second group did not gain the same services and benefits that they would normally receive as a national citizen. As I said in my work, Henry, in general, the art of government consists of taking as much money as possible from one class of citizens to give to another. I can see this. We can see this. We can refer this to illegal immigrants, since they pay greater taxes than they receive back in America.
I would like to say to Mr. Hobbes, I don't agree with you at all. Immigrants are said to take over the jobs in America, which leaves no jobs for those of us who have lived here our whole lives. As I stated in the Critique of Pure Reason in 1781, metaphysics has the proper object of its inquiries 3 ideas only: God, freedom, and immortality. Immigrants must be free to come into our country, be free to have the privilege to work at jobs just as someone born in America would have.
Mr. Kant, I must disagree on how you've arrived at that conclusion, because the range of jobs available to illegal immigrants is very small, because often they are neither educated nor know much English, since they come from another country in which most of the time English is not the primary language. So is it really freedom when you must take what little options you have in order to pay your bills? Is there not a saying in the century that beggars cannot be choosers? If your choice is predetermined, as all choices are by God, then it most certainly is not freedom, as complete freedom does not exist. This is most clearly described in my principle of optimism and is supported by the Bible verse that states, "The heart of man plans his way, but the Lord establishes his steps," meaning that man may wish to do something, but it is always God's decision in the end.
It is freedom. There's nothing else we can do if they don't speak English or any better or don't have a college education. In fact, in America, immigrants can go to college if they want, so why couldn't they also learn better English? They should have just as much freedom as those born here, and they do, considering they can have the same jobs as us Americans. An article written about myself said that I believe freedom is a part of human nature, and I do. Everyone on this earth must be free to work where they like if they are able to, and currently we seem to have enough jobs for those immigrants who live here now.
However, Mr. Kant, just because we do not have the means to provide an environment and community where choice is possible does not mean that it is still freedom if the immigrants' options lack choice, even if it is not your fault. Now back to you, Voltaire.
Yes, but still over time, these illegal immigrants are not always found. This usually leads to a lot of confusion because future generations of these people are technically born in the nation, granting them citizenship. but they are originally illegally immigrated. This makes it hard to decide whether or not they should be deported or not.
Okay. Well, I think that's enough on the topic. Why don't we move on to the next topic, the benefits and negative political aspects of immigrants.
Thank you, Mr. Descartes. One of the things necessary to economically thrive in America is in education, and often our jobs, wages, and living conditions have a strong correlation with the extent and quality of our education. While our life is dependent on other things like drive, parental influence, and ability to cope with unfamiliar situations, the quality of our education plays a primary role. As I once said, education can do anything. It can make bears dance. However, a good education is something that immigrants tend to lack because of the conditions they were raised in. This is leading to only a small range of jobs for those immigrants who are uneducated or who speak little English, which takes advantage of cheap labor to do a large variety of jobs that many Americans would be unwilling to do because of the hours, labor, and wages involved. The Oregon State University wrote an article about me and my life in which it explained that I was born into the educated elite with a father who was a jurist and a professor of moral philosophy and a mother who was the daughter of a professor of law, giving me a much larger range of job options than the average German citizen. In fact, I contributed much to metaphysics, epistemology, logic, philosophy of religion, as well as mathematics, physics, geology, jurisprudence, and history, which I was only able to do through the great quality of my education. What do you have to contribute to this, Mr. Kant?
Well, I think healthcare is a large problem concerning immigrants, mostly because they can't afford medications and other forms of care, as well as the fact that they can't have healthcare in general. As I stated in my categorical imperative, act in such a way that you treat humanity, whether in your own person or in the person of any other, never merely as a means to an end, but always at the same time as an end. I was trying to say was that we need to treat everyone the same, which includes giving immigrants healthcare regardless of who they are. An article written by the International Relations said that I believed we need to open our doors to other people in other countries. This is very true.
Healthcare, I believe, isn't a huge issue until you factor in immigration. Immigrants shouldn't get healthcare, for they shouldn't be here in the first place. I would also like to say that life is short, so why bother? As OregonState.edu states, I believe that life is very short and brutal. In my book Leviathan, the condition of man is a condition of war against everyone against everyone. What I said there meant that no matter what, we will always end up against each other.
Yet, Mr. Hobbes, as I recall reading, immigrants pay more in taxes than they receive in social benefits, so therefore deporting them or denying them health care has a negative influence over the country's economy, as they are contributing to our nation's economy and therefore its welfare.
So yes, but still, over time, the allegedly illegal immigrants are not always found. This usually leads to a lot of confusion because future generations of these people are technically born in the nation granting them citizenship, but they are originally illegally immigrated. This makes it hard to decide whether or not they should be deported or not.
Very well. Let's move on to the topic of deportation, and as I believe Voltaire, you have a hands-on-hands experience with this.
Yes, for I myself was deported to England for arguing against the Cavalier de Rohan in 1726 until 1729, and was not able to return to France until I was granted re-entry in 1735. Due to the experiences and struggles I faced, I most certainly created my disliking of the idea.
But Voltaire, you seem to just be concerning yourself. You need to understand that deportation is tearing apart families, as well as understand that we don't currently have enough resources to deport all of our immigrants back into their home country. As the Stanford Encyclopedia said concerning my works, I believe in humanity helping each other, and we must be as hospitable as we can to immigrants. Earlier in my life, I stated that you must act that your principle of action might safely be made a law for the whole world, the groundwork of metaphysics morals. This means that if we deport all of our immigrants, then other countries, such as Mexico or anywhere else, should deport all immigrants. They aren't really doing so.
Yes, I agree with what you're saying. However, as I said in one of my works, Oedipus, a witty saying proves nothing. I understand that this splits families, but I just do not see the facts and evidence that supports it. Even though I find that the idea of deportation to be unfair and unjust, as I said in a biography of me from biography.com, I stated, I die adoring God, loving my friends, and not hating my enemies, and detesting superstition.
But a witty statement can prove something so long as it is true. Deportation is tearing apart families, and you don't seem to accept that fact.
You may argue about deportation and its pros and cons, but it's also vital not to forget that we're also helping Mexico in not deporting illegal immigrants, which is necessary to a world in which we exist as peaceful mutual nations. As I recall, Mexico benefits greatly from illegal immigrants who send money back to Mexico. In fact, I remember reading it was Mexico's third primary income. Therefore, the U.S. is indirectly aiding Mexico with its economy, which is good for the peace of our souls. As I once wrote in a dialogue, which was later translated into the shorter Lebanese text, we want for the good of others, not for the profit that we can gain from it, but because it is agreeable to us in itself. Mexico currently has a variety of issues, including drug trafficking and gang wars, so being able to help the families who are actually working to make a difference is very beneficial. As the website Philosophy of Philosophers explained in an article about my philosophical beliefs, the evil is a shadow of good, so therefore we must be good in order to thrive and live with ourselves and our actions. In this case, it most likely means that we must continue to support the illegal immigrants who are here in order to help the world improve. Mr. Hobbes, I believe that you have a completely different idea to present to this conversation, apart from healthcare and the benefits to Mexico.
I believe that security is another large problem with immigration. Immigrants aren't protected as well as they are often minorities. Minorities are often mistreated by authorities in society. Secondly, terrorists are not American. As Trinkle.edu states, I believe that fear of death is the primary source of crimes. This means that we are letting in potential terrorists in our society. Some people also think that immigration provides a diversity within the arts. However, I disagree. As I once said in my book Leviathan, no arts, no letters, no society, and which is worst of all, continual fear and danger of violent death, and the life of man solitary, poor, and nasty, British and short.
What an interesting argument. Although some of you got carried away. Anyway, just to review for all you sleepers in the audience, our main topic today was immigration, and the philosophers here today were Voltaire, Gottfried Liebniz, Immanuel Kant, and Thomas Hobbes, who disagreed upon their views. Voltaire believed that immigration was good and did not affect too much of the economy. If left out of control, it can create overcrowding and reduce the opportunities for jobs, while Gottfried Liebniz supported immigration because it was good for the American dream and it supported Mexico. However, the jobs available to immigrants were not very good and should be improved along with the availability of credentials to get better jobs. Mr. Kant believed that health care was necessary for all immigrants, that deportation was a waste of time and resources, and that all immigrants should have a job if they come to our country. Mr. Hobbes believed that life is short, brutal, and nasty, and that immigrants affect economic, health care, and security ramifications negatively. I hope you enjoyed. Now please stay tuned because we'll be right back for the Tour de Slug at 10. We'll be right back.